Welcome to the future of fundraising. I'm Kalyan Verma, founder and CEO of Almabase. If you've been feeling like the old fundraising playbook isn't quite working the way it used to, you're right. Donor expectations are shifting, AI brings in new challenges and opportunities, among many other things. But here's the good news. You're not alone in figuring this out. My goal with this podcast is to find out what works in today's landscape by talking to leaders who are navigating the shift right alongside you and succeeding in building sustainable fundraising programs. So this show is about real conversations, practical ideas, and learning from each other so your team can thrive no matter what comes next. Let's get started. I'm so excited to be here with Kelly Holdcraft today. Welcome to the podcast, Kelly.
Thank you so much. I'm equally as excited. How fun. Inaugural podcast.
Absolutely. I mean, you probably don't need an introduction, but for those that aren't aware, Kelly Holdcraft is the executive director of Alumni Success at William and Mary College, where she's been working on alumni engagement for over 13 years now in various roles. So Kelly, maybe just to start us off, would you mind sharing a little bit of your background with our audience? Where did you grow up? What was young Kelly like? How did you get into the world of educational advancement? Maybe even just like connecting the dots to what your current role as director of Alumni Success looks like.
What was young Kelly like? She was adorable.
You still are.
Of course. So I actually grew up in Michigan, and I went to Michigan State. And truthfully, I didn't have the best college experience, which is odd given that I'm in alumni engagement. But the through line is that after I graduated from State, I moved to Washington, D.C. And it was the early 90s. There was no Facebook. There was no social media. But there were really strong networks. And the Spartan Network had a group called the DC Spartans, and they became my people. I found that I had a really tight-knit community of people who I had a shared experience with. We were all kind of far flung from home. And they were the group that brought me in. And that was kind of my first touch point to alumni engagement. In fact, when I graduated, my grandmother was also a Michigan State grad, and she gifted me a lifelong membership in the Michigan State Alumni Association.
How awesome.
But it's funny because fast forward many years, I was actually on Michigan State's alumni board, and come to find out those lifelong memberships were such a money loser for the organization. It was, when you're in that membership model, you want that membership year over year. I would say that it was the best investment that she could have ever made in me, because Michigan State, as an alum, I became so much more invested in it. And then I could see later in life how I became more and more connected with the university through my children. I used a lot of their child development resources. And then professionally, I started becoming more involved with them. And eventually, like I said, I was on Michigan State's Alumni Association board. And then at the same time, I was getting my master's at Georgetown University. I'd moved into higher education. I was, in my past life, a corporate paralegal for a very large firm in Washington, D.C. And then started working at Georgetown. I directed their paralegal studies program, and then got my master's in public relations and strategic communications. And I used my capstone thesis in alumni engagement. I did an entire thesis on how to help the DC Spartans better connect with alumni. And suddenly I realized, this is a job. I want to do this as a job, and I could take my thesis and kind of shop it out and say, I may not have professional experience. I have volunteer experience, and I have this thesis. And that's truly how I came to William and Mary. They they took a chance on me as somebody who, wasn't in that kind of advancement world. But truthfully, let's be real, there are very few people who
Yeah.
study this. There's no path of study in college to this. Um, so I guess I followed the usual path into advancement, which is this path, the round and round path, not the straight path. But I have been at William and Mary for, like you said, 13 years now, and exactly like you said, various roles with the Alumni Association, now advancement.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, you and I have spoken before. I knew bits and pieces of this story, but just to hear the journey is really incredible. And like you said, most people that work in alumni relations and fundraising today don't really have a degree necessarily for that job, but there are various experiences in your life where you truly feel like, that's the purpose, that's the mission that you want to be serving. And so it's really interesting to hear your journey. I'm curious about your specific title, right? Because there's not a lot of people, with the title Alumni Success. Do you mind explaining what Director of Alumni Success looks like and why it's titled that way?
So the title came from a conversation with with some consultants that we work with, and these are names of folks that people in the industry know, just Chris Marshall and Ryan Catherwood. And I really grabbed onto the name because I feel like Alumni Success, I talk about this, how it's the future term. I believe that alumni success is the future term, like the state of alumni engagement, because it talks about it in a return on investment way, that it's a two-way investment, that we're invested in the success of our alumni, and our alumni know this, and therefore they're invested into the success of William and Mary. So, it's an ambitious title. I feel like I live up to it. And it's definitely something that I take very seriously. And I think about that with my team and what we're doing in order to truly measure the ROI of alumni success.
That's what I would say drew me to this conversation of just trying, because I've always been of the belief over the last 10 years running Alma Base and, through my passion in this space, I've always believed that alumni engagement has to be a two-way street, and institutions have to be thinking about what's in it for my alumni. How do we give value to alumni before seeking value in return, right?
Yes.
And your title truly reflects that. I'm also curious, why do you think more institutions aren't doing this today, right? Like most titles today are Director of Alumni Relations, Director of Alumni Engagement, etc. Why aren't more people? And the reflection in the title is just one way of communicating it, but I don't think most alumni relations teams are thinking about it from the lens of my job is to make sure alumni are being successful.
Yeah.
Why don't you think more institutions are doing that?
I think there'll be a little bit of a theme here about how wonderfully blessed I feel to be at William and Mary.
Yeah.
For multitudes of different reasons. And I'll say in a lot of ways, it starts at the top. It starts not only with your advancement VP. Well, first of all, I believe that the advancement model helps, but it also, it rises up to the president's level. If the president of the university truly believes in alumni engagement, then a title like Alumni Success doesn't seem weird. And one of the things that is unique about William and Mary is our last campaign, led by our senior VP of advancement, Matthew Lambert, had 3 campaign goals. Usually a campaign, when it comes out, it's just one goal and it's raise a ton of money.
Yeah.
And at William and Mary, we had 3 campaign goals. Our campaign was called For the Bold because these were very bold goals for especially a university our size, and a university without a med school and without an engineering school. The number one campaign goal was strengthen alumni engagement. Just straight out of the bat, straight out of the gate, strengthen alumni engagement. The second was a very aggressive alumni participation goal at 40%. And while we maybe didn't hit that, we got darn near close. We were in the 30% range. We were the highest alumni participation rate of any public university. And that's huge. And then the third was $1 billion, which we far surpassed. So here at William and Mary, alumni success isn't something that seems bold. It's actually like what we talk about and what we think about in advancement.
That's very, very interesting. And what I'm hearing is obviously strong leadership, and leadership that is able to sort of see long-term kind of like investments like these to be able to strengthen where the institution is advancing towards. Yeah. There's always this tendency that I see across institutions where like the leader, the VP of advancement or the institution's leader is sort of thinking more about, why don't we just like raise a couple more major gifts and be done with the goal? Like, why invest in long-term alumni engagement? Because the ROI is very long-term, right? And by the time they reap the returns of that investment, they're probably not even at the institution anymore, right? So there's a lot of that short-term thinking. Have you observed anything about why is it that at William and Mary, the leadership is able to think more long-term? I'm trying to figure out if there's anything that other institutions can learn from that.
Well, I think one of the things you have to start with is that William and Mary is the second oldest university in the country. William and Mary, in fact, this weekend is what we call Charter Day. So we're celebrating the 333rd year that William and Mary was chartered.
Wow.
So we are all about long-term. And we have a president that, so our president, Catherine Rowe, she, love this about her. She likes to speak in like athletics terms. She's very big into athletics. She is actually a ultimate Frisbee champion. Wow. Her and her husband coaches ultimate Frisbee on campus. So she talks a lot about how at William and Mary, we're playing the long game. In everything that we do, because we want to be around for another 333 years. In the William and Mary Charter, it talks about now and for all times coming. So it's at William and Mary, it really is kind of part of who we are, is thinking about how we adapt and move and change and think about how we can be successful. President Rowe talks a lot about you change that which you value the most. So we value the higher education, our students. So we have to be thinking about how we change and adapt to what's happening in the world. And truthfully, in advancement, the way that I see it is I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. Mm-hmm. And Simon has this book called The Infinite Game.
Yeah. So
when you're thinking about it in the terms of advancement, campaigns are finite games. They have beginnings and ends, and but alumni engagement is the infinite game. Mm-hmm. So if you're not invested in the infinite game, like any company, in Simon Sinek's book, he talks about like Circuit City and these companies that went out of business. You want to be the William and Mary in that game. You want to be thinking long game all the time.
That's very inspiring. And I mean, I love how you connected the dots all the way back to like the original charter 333 years ago, just sort of like talking about like long term, right? Yeah. Changing gears a little bit here, I'm curious, what kind of KPIs or metrics do you look at to sort of measure success in your role today?
We have a set of KPIs that follows very closely to CASE's global engagement metrics. We're thinking in terms of philanthropy and volunteer and experiential and communications. We have our board meeting coming up tomorrow and Friday, and we created our KPIs. And then, we try to keep things a little bit high level, but then at the same time, we're consistently talking about How do we pull those forward? It's one thing to measure. It's another to think about, like, where are those KPIs taking you? Something really interesting is that I just got in my inbox your advancement journal blog, and I was reading through it, and it's talking about how to have, like, long-term alumni engagement, and you talked about measuring and learning and improving. Those were kind of the three things that I read in there, and I would say that something that I would add to that is asking. Because we just actually finished an all alumni survey, and our response was significant. I mean, we kind of blew the doors off of response rate, and I think that that's a huge part, especially for younger generations. They want to be asked, because I think that in our industry, sometimes we get a little insular and think that we know best. And really, the best alumni engagement shops look outward and ask. And then you do and measure and learn and improve.
That is such a powerful point, because I think when we think about, like, the advancement sort of like architecture at most institutions, it's very like inward out, right? It's like, this is what we do. This is the campaign that we do. This is the alumni engagement program that we do, etc. As opposed to just like, we are here to serve the needs of our alumni and try and understand how we can still be relevant in their lives and be useful, things like that. So that's a great point. Are there particular programs or campaigns that you've done at William and Mary that you're particularly proud of?
Plenty.
Any recent ones that you'd like to call out?
I think that one of the things that we're doing really well in alumni engagement is taking some time to really focus on student and young alumni engagement. I mean, truthfully, generational engagement as a whole. And I'll also give significant shout out to my colleagues who do. We have an entire team that does identity-based engagement also. So we're already on the leading edge of that. And now it's my team's turn to really think about how we can be on the leading edge of generational engagement. So I'm a doctoral candidate right now at William and Mary, and my doctoral question is really thinking about how we can best support Gen Z emerging adults as they make that transition from being a college student to a young alumni. Like, what is alumni engagement's role in helping support these young people into adulthood? So we've done some different things in that we're looking at how we move our students through basically a customer journey. We call it the first three journey. So from being a student into being a young alumni, especially in those first 3 years, because the traditional 22 to 25-year-old is a distinctive developmental stage called emerging adulthood. And it really is a time like this flex time between they're not an adolescent, but they don't quite feel like they're an adult. So they're really looking for support in that space, and how do we serve that role? So we're adapting a lot of our programming to focus on that. We've created an alumni study hall for our students, and it's not just come and study at the Alumni House. We also are having greeters be the old guard members of our oldest generation, greeting them at the door. We're doing young alumni giving campaigns around give $5 to get these students a Celsius kind of thing, which is, the power drinks.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to connect that all the way through. We're also adapting like an immersive grad fair for our seniors, and thinking about how we're not only providing them with what are the benefits of being an alumni, but also capturing their information, their non-William and Mary email, their phone number, and truthfully, something that's really important is like where are you going to be living?
Yeah.
And I tell my records people, I'm like, look, I don't have their address, but I don't care. They're telling me they're moving to Chicago. Code them as Chicago so that we can get information to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, I think the other unique thing that we did this year that was really super successful is at Homecoming, we hosted 2 different events. We hosted a remote work lounge. So Thursday and Friday, we have all this space that's available, and we told our alumni, knowing that it might be focused a little bit on our younger alumni, come to the alumni house. We'll have Wi-Fi and plugs and space, and it'll be quiet, and we'll give you snacks. Come and work, because oftentimes people can't come down until Friday night. Instead, come Thursday. But then also we did a first 3 lounge for our first 3 years of graduating classes, because we know they're coming back for homecoming, but they're not registering. They're just like sleeping on their friends' couches. So are going to the department open houses.
Yeah.
So we said, register, it's free. Come to the alumni house.
Yeah.
We'll give you a free parade t-shirt and snacks. But start understanding like the homecoming journey much sooner. And it was, truthfully, it was bonkers. There were so many people. At one point, we were like, we can't keep up with the snacks.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. Yeah.
That's amazing. Actually, that's a really cool idea for homecoming and as far as engaging young alumni is concerned. That's really interesting. I mean, we spoke about this. You've spent your last 13 years and counting at William and Mary. So during this time, from your perspective, how has fundraising and alumni relations changed? Are there particular aspects that stand out as like, this is what's different?
No, I think you see this when I see this most in a marked way when you go to your case conferences, like to your district case conferences. You can kind of taste the temperature of alumni engagement based on the titles and what people are presenting on. And when I first started going to case conferences, it was like Alumni Career Services. Alumni Career Services is the new cool thing that everybody has to do. And then it became diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And really, if I was going to hedge, I would have said that kind of the next thing was going to be enrollment, because we're all looking at this enrollment cliff, and this is going to date me a little bit, but sometimes I feel like the enrollment cliff is like Y2K, like it was there to scare everybody into action. I think what we're finding is 2 things have really happened that have set enrollment aside. The first of which is U.S. politics and what's happening in higher education because of the Trump-Vance administration. And we saw that in our survey. It was like we would get survey responses that are like, "You're too woke." And then the other response was, "You're not woke enough." So, just trying to manage the politics of it. And then, of course, AI and fundraising. Yeah. And you see it in, I'm going to be presenting at Case 3 in just a couple days. And enrollment really isn't part of the conversation, but politics is, and AI, definitely.
I'm also curious, I mean, across the board, one sort of major trend that we're seeing across higher education fundraising is most institutions are reporting a decline in donor counts, right? Like even if the total dollars grew.
Yeah.
I'm curious, are you seeing that at William and Mary? And what's your take on why do you think this is happening? And how would you think about reversing that trend? Because I think declining participation is unsustainable after a certain point. So I'm curious what your take on that is.
Yeah, the Chronicle of Higher Ed just came out with an article, and it was like 5 trends that will shape fundraising in 2026. And a big one was how economic uncertainty is, they call it clouding fundraising.
Mm.
And in engagements where we see economic uncertainty, it might, for engagement, it the economic piece of it is essentially the cost of events. Like,
Mm.
we're seeing like this such a significant increase in costs, and you have to think like, where are we going to get to some homeostasis in that?
Yeah.
Should we be charging full board for these events and they're just going to be so outrageously expensive? Or should we lower the cost significantly to increase engagement because we're seeing declining participation rates? It's like,
Mm.
where are we going to get to some balance in that? I think it's interesting. This article also, one of the things that it calls out is a trend is that staff will need motivation. And they also just sent out Melanie Ho, who's somebody that I follow, talked about like in higher education, how do we stop that hamster wheel of we're just all trying to do more with less resources.
Mm.
And I always define resources as people, time, and money.
Mm.
So we're just trying to figure out what that looks like. And keeping our sanity and motivation at the same time.
Are you seeing a decline in participation at William and Mary over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
We are not unlike any other institution.
Mm.
Yeah.
You should, I mean, it would be great if you can send me the link to that article after this call, and like I'll link to the show notes so people that are listening to this can take a look at that article as well.
Yeah.
I'm also curious to pick on that thread or to go deeper into that thread that you talked about of AI, right? Like, what's your current state of mind with respect to AI in fundraising? Like, how do you see the risks? How do you see the opportunities? And I specifically say current because it feels like it's changing every week, right? So what's your perspective right now on AI with respect to its risks and opportunities in fundraising?
One of the key things to note is that William and Mary does have autonomous fundraisers.
Yeah.
Her name is Wren. The Wren building is, the oldest college building in the United States. So, we have seen success in it, and I understand it. Like, I understand the need for it. Matthew Lambert, when he kind of introduced the AI fundraiser, he talked about kind of the way that you think about your brain, how you only use 20% of your brain, but how do you tap into that other 80%? And again, another thing that I feel very blessed about it being at William & Mary is we have a really good staffing model. Like, when I tell my colleagues at other public institutions how many staff we have, even in alumni engagement, they're envious. Because we do have a really solid staffing model, but you can't keep staffing up in that direction. You're going to lose money at some point. So autonomous fundraising makes sense. Where I would like to see more opportunity in AI is in engagement, and connecting it with things like our survey results so that we can use these autonomous engagement officers to keep people in conversation, to keep a pulse, like utilizing them in a survey way to say, hey, this is what our survey said. How do you feel? So it's kind of like continuing the survey conversation so that we can continue to be in conversation with our alumni. So they're truly being engagement officers in the background. The way that I currently use AI is much more as a creative partner.
Yeah.
I heard somebody call AI their word calculator. It helps them get there faster. And I'm seeing that I can, the scale of time that I get from AI is really significant. I have a huge signature event weekend that I'm working on where I'm producing something like 60 events over 4 days, and I need to do panel discussion themes and talking points and
Mm.
questions. And I mean, it would take me weeks beforehand to create something like this.
Yeah.
And I can truthfully fit it into my Pal Copilot and massage it for like 15, 20 minutes. And I'm always like shocked, like Home Alone, hands on the side of my mouth, shocked what comes out.
I mean, again, this is evolving, and I think there is so much opportunity with AI at various levels of like the advancement scope, and I'm sure we'll continue to see that evolve. But I think the risks are also very real, and the fears are very real, right?
Yeah.
And so I think on the other side of the aisle, for people like me and companies like Almabase and others in the space, being very conscious, being very thoughtful about how should we introduce AI, how should we leverage this technology, how should we, I mean, ultimately AI is a tool, right? It just depends on how well it's leveraged and where it's leveraged and like how the risks are contained. And so yeah, just to kind of wrap that thought, we've been very conscious, very careful, very thoughtful of just like, how do we protect the risks? How do we, understand the fears of people in the space better? How do we serve them well and not sort of like move past that fear and just like focus on the outcomes? Because I think that is really critical going forward.
I want to make one last point on this. I was just reading Jonathan Haidt. He's the author of Anxious Generation. He's a professor at NYU. He's a leader in like civic engagement and civic leadership and discussion. And I consume Substacks. Like I love them. And he just published one talking about AI. And he said that there's never been a better time to just be human. Like create and think and act, like get out there, make mistakes, like write and act and do in a way that AI cannot, because that's really the most important part. Like we really do, to your point, need to figure out the most ethical and appropriate way to use AI, and then maybe all the investment in AI will finally figure out how to monetize AI when we figure out how to use it properly.
And I think with the evolution of AI, we're still in like chapter 1, and humanity has always figured out ways to sort of adapt to the next sort of technological evolution and still, sort of prosper. So I'm pretty confident that like it'll be a good future. And on that note, I had a question about the future, truly again in the spirit of this podcast. If you had to take a bet and pick one fundamental change you expect to see in this field, in the field of alumni relations and fundraising over maybe the next decade, is there anything that stands out to you as maybe a bet on a fundamental change that you expect will happen?
I'm going to kind of lean on that generational space. And this is something that whether it's higher education or corporations are thinking about, is each generation is getting more and more nuanced and more diverse, and their expectations are definitely changing. So, how are we adapting alongside that, especially at the rapid pace that it's happening? Higher education is not necessarily known for being able to like shift very quickly. So, advancement teams really need to get more nimble. And, President Rowe often talks about how at William & Mary, university advancement is like the sandbox. Like we have the opportunity and ability to adapt and change differently and quickly. So, being able to really think in that direction, and being able to set aside kind of past thinking about how alumni engagement is supposed to look and feel, and how fundraising is supposed to look and feel. Hence things like autonomous fundraising and thinking about customer journey mapping in alumni engagement, I think are really important. So, I'm certainly somebody who is a forever student, and I consume a lot of information about, articles and blogs and podcasts. You heard this through this conversation
Yeah.
in the industry, but I'm also trying to think how I look outside of that and look to how other industries are doing it, and how advancement needs to adapt and change towards that.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And I love the sandbox framing by the president, right? Like, so, yeah, I mean, it also kind of reinforces the message of being innovative, being out there, listening to people, asking, like you said, and understanding, what's changing and sort of adapting to that. That's an excellent answer. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, Kelly, before we move to our lightning round?
Ooh, no, I'm very intrigued by the lightning round. Bring it on.
Awesome. I know this is a surprise for you. I have 4 quick questions for you. You just tell me what's top of mind as I share that question. Ready?
Go for it. Go for it.
Awesome. If and whenever you get stuck at work, where would you go for help?
I would have to say, like, I have some really cool colleagues. Like,
That's awesome.
one story is that my boss, Matt Brandon, I love telling this story because his first job when he graduated from William and Mary was as like an assistant director of alumni engagement. Fast forward through his career, and now he is the CEO of William and Mary's Alumni Association.
That's awesome.
So, like, love that. Like, it's the dream. Oftentimes, it's the dream of a lot of people in alumni engagement to like head up their alumni engagement offices. I've talked a lot about Matthew Lambert. I also have colleagues like Megan Palumbo, who again is like a leader in that space. So if I'm thinking about like alumni engagement, I really have fantastic colleagues. I say that 2025 is the year that I got to hire Dave Lanza, and Dave came from Drexel University, who I met at a case conference
That's awesome.
many years ago, and now I got to hire him. So he is definitely, a thought partner and a thought leader, and also my other colleague Val Cushman. Val is a leader in women's philanthropy, and has like created conferences and associations around women's philanthropy. So again, I told you the theme of this conversation was going to be how lucky I am to work at William and Mary.
Yeah.
And that will be my walk away. My walk away point is how people can also work at William and Mary.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a great answer. So you go to your wonderful colleagues at William and Mary. Second question: who's one fundraising leader you recommend others in the industry should follow?
Read what Ryan Catherwood is putting out, and I have said this to Ryan. Ryan has this unique ability to take a grenade, pull the pin, throw it in the middle, and say, okay, everybody, what do you think? And he pushes all the boundaries, and for good, for bad, like you can completely disagree with him, or you can, but at the end of it, it's always thought provoking. So I really appreciate that. And there are often times when I'm sending, Ryan's post to my colleagues saying, what do you think? Like, what's your take on this? What's your read on this?
Yeah, it's a great answer. I've known Ryan for a long time, and he's wonderful.
He's just down the road.
That's awesome. I'll definitely send him this podcast episode as well. What is one book or podcast you'd recommend to others?
I'm looking on my bookshelf. So I'm a big Priya Parker fan. So The Art of Gathering, great book. I also am a Robert Putnam fan. Robert Putnam wrote Bowling Alone, so kind of talking about civic engagement, which I think is really important for alumni engagement, is thinking about how do we bring people back together intentionally that not only serves each other, but serves your community. So anything by Robert Putnam it's very thick, and it's essentially, for lack of a better term, like a research tome. But anything that his group puts out is really wonderful. There's a documentary called Join or Die that his group did. That's fantastic also.
That's awesome. That's a great recommendation. We'll find a link to that documentary and Robert Putnam's books and link it to the show notes. Last question. What's one nonprofit apart from William and Mary that our listeners should consider supporting, and why?
Both of my children have military experiences, so I tend to lean into like military family for my own giving. I'm also a big Humane Society giver. So personally, those are the places that I put my money toward. And also your own alma mater. Hello. So while I am not currently, hope to be future alum of William and Mary, I direct a lot of my giving to some very specific places at Michigan State that have helped me and my family, become wonderfully successful human beings.
That's awesome. I think that's a great place to end the conversation. Thank you, Kelly. This was such an insightful conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to get on this podcast.
I really appreciate the opportunity. And for our listeners out there, please feel free to find me on LinkedIn and connect. I'm always open to having one-on-one conversations. And also, if you happen to be in Nashville in a couple days, or you see me at the Case 3 conference, again, would love to be in conversation with you. I'm always up for learning.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.